Why dark chosen ones were born from the collision of light and darkness. There's something ancient in you, something older than your name, older than your skin, older than this entire lifetime. It's not just memory, it's frequency. A code stamped into your soul, forged at the intersection of two primal forces, light and darkness. Not the cartoon versions of good and evil, not the watered-down spiritual cliches. I'm talking about the original energies, the cosmic opposites that give birth to all things. And if you've ever felt like you don't belong entirely to one side or the other, if you felt too complex for the light and too pure for the dark, then listen closely. Because you, my friend, are not confused. You are a dark chosen one, and you were born from the collision of light and darkness not by accident, but by design. We've been taught to see light and dark as enemies, one to be worshipped, one to be feared, one to move toward, one to run from. But what if I told you that the most powerful beings in existence are not those who live purely in the light, nor those who are consumed by the dark, but the ones who were forged in the explosion when the two collided. The ones who carry both codes, both languages, both instincts. The ones who were designed not to choose sides, but to transcend the split entirely. If you've ever felt like you were born into spiritual contradiction, like there's a war inside you between something divine and something destructive, it's because you are a living paradox. And that paradox is not a flaw. It's the source of your power. You were never meant to be one or the other. You were meant to hold both, to transmute, to alchemize, to bridge worlds that were never supposed to meet. But to do that, you first had to be broken, not because you were weak, but because something as powerful as you had to be shattered to be activated.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Let me explain. Before you came into this body, your soul made a contract, but not a verbal one, but an energetic one written into the quantum threads of your being. And that contract said, I will walk the path of collision. I will enter the world in between. I will be born with both the codes of the sacred and the codes of the shadow. I will be misunderstood, misused, and maybe even feared. But I will remember. And when I do, I will awaken others who were forged the same way. That's what you agreed to. And that's why your life has never been simple. Think about it. The pain you've carried didn't come from nowhere. The depth of your emotion, the rawness of your experiences, the complexity of your inner world, none of it is random. You were initiated young, maybe through trauma, maybe through betrayal, maybe through isolation, but all of it was part of the forge. Because someone like you, someone meant to carry the full spectrum, had to be tempered by fire. You had to know what it felt like to break, in order to know what it means to rebuild from truth. But you had to be torn from the illusion of safety so that you could seek the real thing. And here's the hardest part. In the early stages of your journey, you probably tried to pick a side. Maybe you tried to be only light, to purify yourself, to become acceptable, clean, good. You tried to meditate the rage away, love the shadow out of existence, silence the parts of you that didn't fit the spiritual mold. Or maybe you swung the other way, you embraced your chaos, your rebellion, your pain. You burned everything down, not because you hated the world, but because you couldn't lie to yourself anymore. And still, neither path felt complete. That's because they weren't meant to be. You weren't meant to choose. You were meant to merge. You are the child of the collision, and that means you carry the power of opposites united. Your shadow isn't your shame, it's your fuel. Your light isn't your ego, it's your compass. You are not here to be pure. You're here to be whole. Wholeness includes the parts that don't look good on Instagram. It includes the anger, the grief, the lust, the magic, the madness, the silence, the stillness, the fire. You are all of it. And the moment you stop resisting that truth, you start to remember who you really are. But awakening to this truth is only the beginning. Because once you realize you were born from the collision, the question becomes, what are you going to do with that power? Will you continue to hide it? Will you keep trying to fit into a world that was never built for someone like you? Or will you rise imperfect, unpolished, and unstoppable, and use your duality as a tool of transformation? Let me ask you something real, something only you can answer. What part of yourself have you been trying to exile just to survive? What sacred part of your darkness have you disowned in the name of being the good one? What ancient part of your light have you buried under self-doubt because it felt too holy, too real, too much? Because when you reclaim those parts, when you stop chopping yourself in half to make others comfortable, you become dangerous to the world's illusions. You walk into a room and the masks fall. You speak, and people feel something they forgot they had inside them. You breathe, and the air changes. That's not drama. That's frequency. That's what happens when someone born from the collision finally remembers they are the bridge. You are not here to escape the world. You're here to remake it from the inside out, not with force, but with presence, not with perfection, but with truth. And the truth is, you were never meant to be safe. You were meant to be sovereign, not ruled by the light, not ruled by the dark, ruled by something deeper, your integrated self. So now I ask you, are you ready to stop choosing and start becoming? Because the collision didn't just create you, it activated you. And the world is waiting to feel what happens when someone like you finally stops hiding. The secret power in your pain, why darkness was the training ground for your divine mission. There was never a moment when your pain was meaningless. Then, not a single tear, not a single betrayal, not a single sleepless night was wasted. Every ounce of darkness you've walked through, every wound that cracked you open, every time you were brought to your knees in silence, that was your initiation, not punishment, preparation. Because when you were born from the collision of light and darkness, you didn't come here to float above life. You came here to master it. And mastery doesn't happen in the light alone. Mastery is born in the shadows, in the places no one wants to look, in the parts of yourself you were taught to be ashamed of. There is a hidden intelligence woven into your pain, a secret code that can only be read once you stop resisting it. And that code contains your mission. Most people think purpose is something you chase outside of you, a job, a calling, a title. But for the dark chosen ones, purpose is not found. It's remembered, and it's remembered through the alchemy of pain. That's why your life hasn't been easy. It's why you felt cursed when, in truth, you've been chosen. Because only someone who has felt the full weight of darkness can carry the kind of light that doesn't blind but awakens. Let me tell you something that might shake you. Your suffering has sculpted your soul into a vessel strong enough to hold divine fire. Not the soft, comforting kind of light that makes people feel good for a moment, but the dangerous, catalytic kind that makes people change. And that kind of light burns away illusion. It disrupts, it exposes, it ends timelines. But that kind of power cannot be handed to someone who hasn't been forged by pain. It would destroy them. But you were built for it, because pain was your training ground. Think back. Think of the hardest moments of your life, the ones that made you question everything, the ones that broke your identity, shattered your plans, humbled your ego. Now ask yourself, who did you become on the other side of that? What new eyes did you gain? What truths did you begin to carry that no one could take from you? That's not just healing, that's evolution. That's the birth of your spiritual authority. Your pain didn't just wound you, it woke you. And here's what most people miss. Your pain made you multilingual in the language of human suffering. That means you can walk into someone's life and feel what they can't even say. You can sense what's hiding behind their smile. You can hear the scream in their silence. Not because you're broken, but because you've been there, you know. And that knowing is sacred. That knowing is what makes you a guide, a mirror, a liberator. You didn't choose that role, it was encoded into you the moment you agreed to carry both light and darkness in one body. And yet, here's where the danger lies. If you don't honor your pain as sacred, you will keep trying to escape it. You'll numb it, you'll spiritualize it away. You'll convince yourself that everything happens for a reason while secretly resenting why it keeps happening to you. But the truth is, pain is not something to be healed out of. For the dark chosen ones, pain is something to integrate. Pain becomes your wisdom. It becomes your compass. It becomes the frequency that makes your presence impossible to ignore. And that presence, you may not realize it yet, but it's already working. People feel something when you walk into a room. They soften, or they tense. They either open like flowers or retreat like shadows. Why? Because your energy carries a reminder of what they've forgotten. Your pain has made you magnetic, not to attention, but to truth. And truth always stirs something. You are not just a person anymore. You are a portal for permission. Permission for others to feel what they've buried, to confront what they've avoided, to remember who they were before the world told them to be small. So here's the real question. Are you willing to stop running from your pain and start using it? Not to hurt others, not to wallow in victimhood, but to transmit something holy through it. Because when you claim your pain as sacred, you stop being a survivor and you become a source. Let me say this clearly, no one who hasn't drowned in the dark can truly teach others how to breathe in the light. No one who hasn't questioned their worth can genuinely carry the frequency of unconditional love. And no one who hasn't walked through fire can safely hold it for others. That's why you were chosen, not because you're perfect, but because you didn't die in the dark. You became something new inside it. But now it's your turn to stop hiding, to stop pretending you're normal, and to stop minimizing your story as if it's too much for the world. It is too much for those still asleep, but for the ones who are waking up, you're exactly what they've been waiting for. Not a savior, a mirror, a guide, a living example of what's possible when pain becomes power. The forbidden alchemy, how dark chosen ones transcend duality and rewrite destiny. Most people don't realize they're trapped, not by chains, not by walls, but by duality, by the illusion that they must choose between being good or bad, light or dark, spiritual or human. This split has been embedded into the collective consciousness for so long that it feels like law. But it's not truth, it's a cage. And if you're a dark chosen one, then you came here to break that illusion wide open. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who's still caught in the war of opposites. You came here to embody the forbidden alchemy, the sacred union of what the world told you could never coexist. You see, duality is not evil. It's a necessary stage in awakening. Like a child learning to walk, the soul must first learn through contrast, hot and cold, light and shadow, right and wrong. But at some point, that stage must be transcended, not denied, not rejected, but evolved beyond. And that's what dark chosen ones are here to do. We are here to walk into the heart of duality, not to pick a side, but to fuse the opposites into wholeness, and to become living paradoxes that no system can control, no ideology can categorize, no religion can fully explain. That fusion, this forbidden alchemy, is dangerous to the world because it cannot be weaponized. You can't guilt people who are no longer ashamed of their shadow. You can't manipulate people who have integrated their rage. You can't control people who are no longer addicted to being seen as good. And that's what you become when you cross the threshold of duality. Uncontrollable, unbound, unpredictable, because you are now operating from wholeness, not polarity. But this level of integration doesn't happen in a moment. It is earned. It is lived. It is embodied. It happens when you stop rejecting any part of yourself, when you stop trying to kill your ego and instead reparent it, when you stop silencing your inner rebel and instead listen to the wisdom beneath the rage, when you stop silencing your divine voice out of fear of being too much or too holy. Because here's the secret: every part of you has a sacred function, even the parts you've been told to hide. Your darkness is not the opposite of your light. It is the container for it. It gives your light weight. It gives your wisdom depth. It gives your love teeth. Without it, your light becomes performative, fragile, even manipulative. But when your darkness is conscious, when it is honored, it becomes the grounding force that allows you to channel something real. That's the alchemy. That's the magic. And it is forbidden only because it cannot be monetized, domesticated, or sold back to you in a filtered Instagram quote. This is the path of the third energy, the path of the embodied mystic, the sacred outlaw, the cosmic rebel. It is not about balance in the surface level sense. It's about fusion. True alchemy means you no longer separate the divine from the profane. You recognize that God lives in your rage just as much as in your compassion. That truth can sound like a roar just as much as a whisper, and that your mission includes your shadow, not in spite of it, but because of it. Ask yourself something that most people are afraid to even whisper. What would you become if you stopped trying to be only good? What would you create if you no longer cared about being understood? What frequency would you emit if you allowed your divinity and your darkness to dance, to collide, to merge inside you without shame? This is not about chaos. This is about sovereignty. When you transcend duality, you don't become lawless, you become law itself. You no longer obey external rules. You move by inner alignment. You don't need validation. because you carry your own compass. You don't need permission because your soul is your authority. And from that state, you begin to rewrite destiny, not just your own, but the collective's. Because when one dark chosen one fully awakens, reality bends, and timelines shift. Old structures begin to dissolve not through violence, but through irrelevance. Your frequency begins to emit a signal that says, there is a third way. You don't have to choose between shadow and light. You can become the shape that holds them both. And that message felt, not said, awakens others. They see you, and something ancient inside them stirs. They remember. They begin to question the false binary. They begin to feel their wholeness again. That is the ripple effect of your embodiment. That is the legacy you leave, not in fame or followers, but in freedom. You give people themselves. You give them back their own soul. And that is something no system, no government, no religion, no influencer can ever compete with. So here we are. You've walked through pain. You've held the codes of light. You've danced with your own demons. And now you stand at the threshold of a question that could change everything. Are you willing to hold it all as sacred? Not just the polished parts, not just the acceptable parts, but all of it. Can you love what you were taught to hate? Can you listen to what you were told to silence? Can you become the alchemist of your own existence? Because if you can, then you don't just change your life. You become the one who rewrites the rules entirely. Becoming the living key, how dark chosen ones unlock the next evolution of humanity. There comes a moment on this path, subtle yet irreversible, when you stop asking, why me? And begin to whisper instead, of course me. That shift doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from remembrance. It comes when you finally understand that you weren't cursed with this complexity, this fire, this contradiction. You were chosen. Not chosen as better, not chosen as superior, but chosen to carry something new into a world still addicted to the old. You are not here to prove anything. You are here to become the living key, the one who unlocks dormant codes in others simply by being fully you. This is the final form of the dark chosen one, not a warrior, not a healer, not a teacher, but a frequency. Not a role you play, but a field you emit. And that field is what humanity has been waiting for. Not another savior, not another ideology, but a human being who has integrated the divine and the dark, the mystical and the mundane, the rage and the reverence, and is not at war with any of it. That integration is the next step in human evolution. And you are the prototype. You've probably always felt a step ahead of your time. Like you could see what others couldn't, feel what others ignored, hear a silent drumbeat no one else acknowledged. That's not imagination. That's future memory. Your soul didn't come from the past to fix the broken. It came from the future to plant the codes of wholeness here and now. And those codes don't come through lectures or books. They come through embodiment. Through the way you love, the choices you make, the boundaries you set, the truth you speak, even when your voice shakes. To be the living key is to understand that your presence is the message, that how you live is the transmission. It means you stop trying to convert people and start focusing on radiating truth so clearly that only those ready to receive it will hear it. You don't need to prove your frequency. You don't need to explain your fire. You don't need anyone's approval to be what you were designed to be, because you've already earned your crown in the underworld. And now you wear it not with pride, but with peace. But don't mistake peace for passivity. The dark chosen ones are not here to sit quietly in lotus position while the world burns. We are here to walk into the fire with eyes open and hearts steady. We are here to hold the mirror up to the collective illusion and say, this is no longer real. And we don't do it by shouting. We do it by living in such radical alignment that the lie becomes unbearable in our presence. That's what it means to unlock this next evolution of humanity. Not to force it, to embody it so completely that others can't help but feel it waking up inside them too. But there's a final initiation, and this one is the most sacred. Can you keep walking when no one understands you? Can you keep radiating when no one praises you? Can you hold the frequency of wholeness even when the world still worships fragmentation? Because that's the test of the living key, to remain unchanged in your truth, even when the doors you open are not yet ready to be walked through. You open them anyway, because it's who you are, because it's what you came here to do. And slowly, the world begins to shift. Not overnight, not with headlines, but in the quiet moments when someone hears your story and feels less alone. When someone sees your fire and remembers their own. When someone watches the way you love yourself, even the messy, raw, shadowy parts, and realizes they can do the same. That's the revolution. That's the evolution, not a war, a return. A return to what has always been possible, but never fully embodied until you. You are not too much. You are not too intense. You are not too sensitive, too broken, too complex. You are exactly the shape the future needs. You are the key that unlocks the doors no one else could open, not because they were locked from the outside, but because no one had the courage to go within. And now you have. So go, speak, create, rest, burn, love, set boundaries, break illusions, be still, be wild, be you, not for applause, not for permission, but because the next evolution of humanity is not waiting for a hero. It's waiting for those rare few who remember who they truly are and live it fully, unapologetically, and beautifully. And you are the living key, and the door is already open.